I have a few comments on the first exam. Of course, you know that the complete solutions are posted online. So on this video, I just want to make a few comments about a few things. First of all, I noticed some students had trouble with the idea between cases and variables. So here's another way to maybe think about it that might help. Sometimes you're not given a chart or a complete table. So you have to kind of read the problem and kind of sort of think about what the table might look like. So here, Ms. Cashmoni recently gave an exam to her economic students. The scores on the exams are posted below. But rather than just look at the numbers, you might want to think about the whole chart. And a list might look something like this. You have all the different student names listed here, and I just put down initials of some students. And then the next column would be the exam scores. And this might make it a little easier to decide cases and variables. And again, the cases, keep in mind, cases are the people or things that are being measured or categorized, whereas the variables are those actual measurements or categories that you're using. And so here these are the people that are being measured by a test, and then these are the exam scores. So the students would be the cases, and then the exam score would be the variable. So something you may want to do on a future test is kind of think about what the whole chart might look like. Because rarely am I going to give you the complete chart. You'll just get a description, and from that description you have to kind of think about what the chart would look like. My next comment has to do with making histograms, and most importantly, bin size. Okay, so here we have a bin size of 2. That means we have to group the numbers in groups of 2. Now we could start with 10s and say, okay, 10s and 11s, that would be one bin, and then 12s and 13s would be the next bin, 14s and 15s would be the next bin, and so on. Now, you don't have to start with 10. You could really start, if you wanted to say start with 9s, like say 9s and 10s will be my first bin. 11s and 12s would be my next bin. 13s and 14s would be the bin after that. You can really group them any way you'd like, as long as you kind of keep, in this case, 2 numbers per bin. So with that being said, let's say I take the 10s and 11s. So now I look over here and I say, okay, I look at all my 10s and 11s. So all my 10s and 11s, and it looks like I have about 6 of those. So in the 10 and 11 group or bin, I end up with 6 students. And then I go down to my next bin, which would be all my 12s and 13s. So I gather all my 12s and 13s, and I count those up. So I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I have 8 in my 12 and 13 bin. And you would continue on in that fashion. And then when it comes time to drawing that, so you've got your 10s and 11s bin, and there are 6. So I think if I just kind of go here and say this is going to be 1, this is going to be 2, this is going to be 3, 4, 5, and then 6, 7, 8, so on, give a little bit of a vertical scale. Now I can start building my bars. And so the 10s and 11s, so again, remember we always start our bin at the first number. So at the 10, I'll go up 6 units. And then the question is, well, where do I finish this bar? So there's a couple ways you could look at it. One way is, well, if it's a bin size of 2, that means you have to go across 2 units. That's probably the easiest way to make the decision. The other way, a little more complicated, is you can kind of say, well, all right, so all the 10s are going here, and then all the 11s are going to be going kind of right in here. And so this is really just the 10s and 11s. Now, a third way you could do this is you could simply say, well, where does the next bin start? The next bin starts at 12, So that's where you're going to be cutting off the first bin. Okay, so a couple different ways to think about how you would actually draw this. Okay. Either think about the start. We're always going to start here, and we're going to have to finish on the 12. Or you could kind of think about, well, bin size is 2. That means the width of my bar is 2 units. And so let's go ahead and do the 12 and 13 group. So, and I have to make that bar 8 units tall. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And again, it's a 2-unit bin. And drop it straight down. Again, notice that it finishes at 14, which would be the start of my third bin. So hopefully that'll help you a little bit with trying to figure out the bin sizes. The final comment I have is the idea for how to do the 5-number summary when you have a list of numbers. And rather than using a formula, what you may want to do is literally just kind of count yourself in to the middle. So I'm just going to go ahead and start from the top, and I'm going to say take off 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers here. I'll go to the bottom and I'll take off 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll go back up to the top. Let's take off 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then slide back down to the bottom. Take off the next 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you just kind of keep going until you find yourself in the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I count off 1, 2, 3, 4. And what you count by is really your choice. Count by 4s, count by 3s, count by 5s, what have you. But you keep working until you get into the middle. Now it turns out there's one number in the middle here that is uncovered. That's the number right here, 13, and that's going to be our median value. Okay, so here would be your middle number. Sometimes there's a single number in the middle, in which case you say, okay, that's the median. Sometimes there's 2 numbers in the middle, and you're going to have to average. But in this case, the median is going to be a 13. Now, of course, the min and the max are pretty easy. Those are 10, and then the maximum was a 25. So now how do we get to the quartiles? Well, first of all, you never count the median in the first half or second half. So you kind of just ignore the median, and you say, okay, let's take everything that came before the median. And so those are these numbers right here. And I want to kind of find out what's in the middle of this group of numbers. So once again, I'm just going to kind of work in this group and sort of start taking things off. So I'm just going to take off, I'll take off 1, 2, 3. I'll go to my bottom, take off 1, 2, 3. I'll take off 1, 2, 3. I take off 1, 2, oops, and I took off everything. So I probably should have tried something different rather than the 3. So if I took off, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I took off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It looks like I've got 2 numbers in the middle this time. So I've got 11 and 12 stuck in the middle. So here's where I would have to say, okay, the average of 11 and 12 is 11.5. And that would be your first quartile. Okay, so your first quartile is 11.5. Now I'll take the bottom half. Again, we ignore the median, and we just focus strictly on this half of numbers. So let me start taking off, and I'll hopefully do a little more carefully this time. Let's take off 1, 2, 3, 4. And then from the bottom, I'll take off 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I'll take off 1 from here, and I'll take off 1 from here. And it looks like I've got 2 16s in the middle this time. And so that would be average of 16, and 16, of course, 16. And so that would be your third quartile of 16. So really what you have here is now you've got your 5-number summary. Sometimes you'll see this in some textbooks. They'll call this Q0, they'll call this Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. You have kind of 4 4 different quarters or different quartiles. And so if you ever see something like a Q2 or a Q0, those are really just the same as Q0 being the minimum, Q2 is the median, and Q4 is the maximum. I doubt I would put this on any test, but just in reading stuff, sometimes you'll see Q2 and you're like, well, what the heck is that? So little information for you there. So then the last part is, once you have your 5-number summary, how do you test for outliers? And so this is the outlier test, and it all depends upon the IQR, the interquartile range. So I need to figure out what that interquartile range is. So let me go up top and say, okay, well, here are my quartiles. So my interquartile range is going to be Q3, 16 minus 11.5. And you end up getting a difference of 4.5 for your interquartile range. And now you can apply that down here. Your first quartile, which is 11.5, and take away 1.5 times 4.5. And then the upper test would be, let's see, quartile 3 of 16 plus 1.5 times 4.5. And the rest of this I've left on the answer key, so you can kind of take a look at that when you have time. So hopefully this gives you a little more information on how to kind of work with histograms and box plots.